friends, it's Jordan. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the best books that I read in 2021. I didn't have a ton of really outstanding and fantastic books last year. I also didn't read a lot of books last year, so I had a very small pool of things to choose from as being top favorites. But I have a total of 7 to go over with today. Isn't a terrible number. 7 new favorite books to add to my collection of favorites. Getting right into it, we're going to start with some thrillers, I think, and then, well, actually let's start with the one contemporary romance on this list, and then we can get into some thrillers and then fantasy, because there's mostly fantasy on this list. So the one contemporary romance book that wound up on my list this year was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. We read this for book club, House Salt Book Club 1 month, and I really enjoyed it. I really love Beach Read by her as well. I really enjoy her contemporary romances that she does. I haven't read anything that she wrote when she was doing YA, but I have read both of her adult romances now. I like Beach Read better than this one, but I still really enjoyed this one. We're following 2 characters who are best friends, who have been best friends for a really long time, and every single year they go on this vacation together. Our main character, Poppy, works for a travel magazine. Whenever she goes on these fancy work trips, she takes her best friend Alex with her, and you get to see what's happening in the current timeline because they haven't spoken in a really long time as they're trying to potentially mend their friendship, and then also each subsequent year leading up to this big fallout. I loved their relationship together. I thought Alex was an adorable leading male character. I thought he was so sweet and funny and kind. I really liked the way that he interacted with our main character, Poppy. Poppy was a hot mess express, but in the most relatable way. She felt like a millennial written by millennials. She just had this millennial energy of I'm struggling a lot and I want this very artistic career, but it needs to make money and I don't know who I am and life is hard. I just found this relatable and fun and I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to see what else she writes in this genre because I'm definitely going to read more from her. Getting into a couple of thrillers on my list. The first one is When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. I think this is her current only thriller out, and it's compared to Rear Window meets Get Out. We're following our main character who lives in an area that is being gentrified. It is being bought up by a lot of wealthier white families that are trying to make the neighborhood safe, and they're renovating all these homes. All of her neighbors are disappearing in the night, essentially. It happens very quickly, where somebody comes in, buys this house, a neighbor disappears, and nobody hears from the neighbor again. There's also some other companies coming into the neighborhood to get a foothold in this new growing space, and it starts to get quite suspicious. She befriends her neighbor across the street, who is this white man. They go on a little bit of a investigative hunt to figure out what's happening to her neighbors and why they're literally disappearing from their beds in the middle of the night. I found this to be so intriguing. I loved the concept. I loved the discussion on gentrification, and also the horror mystery element of it was so well done. It was way more dark and over the top than I was expecting, and it just was my favorite thing. I absolutely loved this read, and I can't wait to read more things like this from her. I've also read a couple of her romance books, and while they're fun and I like them, I liked this way better, and I can't wait to see more things that she writes like this. The other mystery thriller that I read this year was Survive the Night by Riley Sager. I know that this is kind of a mixed book. People seem to really enjoy it or really not enjoy it. Controversial. I've really enjoyed everything that I've read from Riley Sager, and in this one we're following a girl in the 90s going to college, and while at college something really traumatic happens to her involving one of her best friends, and so she decides to drop out of college and travel home. In the 90s, there's no Uber, there's no ride services, there's not texting, none of that's available. So she just posts on this ride board that she's looking for a ride, and then this random guy is I'm going there too, we can ride together. And while she's in the car with this guy, she starts to question her reality, question her decisions, question what she's mentioned. She's having some psychological repercussions as a result of the trauma she endured. But then also this guy is creepy. She's an unreliable narrator in that you're not really sure what she's experiencing, or if she's having some kind of episode relating to her trauma, and it makes for a very like convoluted, you're not sure what's really happening plot, which I really enjoyed. It went in a lot of directions that are, yes, very over the top, very dramatized. I loved it, and I bought into every single gimmick of this book, and I thought it was really fun, and I really enjoyed it. Not my favorite Riley Sager book, but still a favorite enough to end up on this list. I had so much fun reading this, and it was a highlight of 2021 for me. The next two, let's just get out of the way. They're from the same author. Every time that I read this author, she ends up on this list. I read 2 books from her this year that I really enjoyed, and that would be Sarah J. Maas. I read A Court of Silver Flames from her, as well as Kingdom of Ash. So let's start with A Court of Silver Flames. This is the 4th full-length novel in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. This is the Nesta and Cassian book. It takes place after the events of the 3rd book, A Court of Wings and Ruin. So we're following like the aftermath of the huge war, the huge battle that was spanning the first 3 books, and how that has affected all of the individual characters. But we're really focusing on Nesta and Cassian in this one. Nesta and Cassian have a really interesting dynamic, kind of even matches in that they've both had very traumatic upbringings in different ways, and they kind of understand each other because of that, but they're also very standoffish because of it. It just makes for their whole dynamic to be really full of bickering and like fun, dramatic scenes. Like they're just very over the top with each other, and they're so much fun, but I really enjoyed getting to know them more and like seeing how they helped each other through their trauma and like deal with that, and how they overcame it together. And there's a lot of new characters introduced in here that I think we'll see in future books that I'm excited to hear from again. I just want all of the original main cast to be like happy, which is something that Sarah J. Maas also likes. She likes her happy endings. She likes everybody's stories to be tied up with neat little bows. So I feel confident that the other characters will also have satisfying endings to their stories. Similarly, with Kingdom of Ash, this is the final book in Throne of Glass that I have been putting off reading for a very, very long time. I've had this book since the day it was released, and I just never read it. I was too afraid of what was going to happen to my babies in this final book. So I finally read it this year, and I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed this conclusion. I thought it was satisfying. Everything I wanted to happen or like felt should have happened was addressed some way in this book, and I felt very fulfilled and satisfied with the ending of this series. I walked away from it feeling like a nice sense of closure, like my characters and my babies are doing well, and they're thriving, and they're succeeding, and it's going to be great. So I really appreciate that Sarah J. Maas does this, likes that as well. She clearly does not like to write bad endings for her characters. I'm not going to complain about that because I like it. This was a great read. I obviously can't tell you much about this because it's the 8th book in a series. Throne of Glass, our main character Selena is an assassin, the most feared assassin in all the land. She is put into a prison, and the young prince of the land and his guard go and rescue her from this prison so that they can put her as like their champion in this tournament that the king is putting on to find the best assassin for him. So she's the best assassin according to herself, but now she wants to be the best assassin for her kingdom. The tournament starts to go a little awry. Like there's some demonic things happening in the tournament, and then she's on a quest to solve it, and that just spirals to 7 more books. The next fantasy book that I want to talk about is Serpent and Dub by Shelby Mahurin. I really, really enjoyed this, and I felt that I was really going to enjoy this because so many people were comparing this to Throne of Glass that this just felt like something that I would enjoy, and I did. We're following 2 main characters. One's a witch, one's a witch hunter. One is hiding as a witch, and the other one is a part of a witch hunting convent. They find themselves in a compromising situation early on in the book, to where the only solution to said situation is for them to get married. So he does not know he's marrying a witch. That already makes for a very interesting dynamic when literally his job is to hunt her people down. I just really enjoyed the bickering, the bantering, the large cast of characters, all of the different powers and the different abilities that people could have, and how the different witches worked, and all of that. That's so many things that I really love in a book, and so I did really enjoy it in this one as well. I have since also read the sequel to this book. I haven't finished the trilogy yet, but I definitely will. I've listened to these on audiobook, and the audiobooks have been very entertaining, very engaging. I like the narrators, and I would recommend them on audio if you're looking for a new fantasy recommendation. And the final book I have to talk about, which is probably my favorite book from 2021, which is also one of the first books I read in the year, is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This book, I can't wait to reread this before the sequel comes out because I fucking loved this book. This was one of our picks for House Salt Book Club. I wasn't really expecting much from this book because I had read so many YA fantasies that I just haven't really loved. And then I read this one and I was like, I've captured my heart, my soul, and my readership. Because I will definitely continue to read everything else in the series or that this author writes. This is a Arthurian retelling. Our main character, B, her mom passes away in this like really sketchy car accident. B feels that there's like more involved with that. Shortly after that happens, she is admitted to this program at a university near where she lives where she can do like her senior year of high school on campus. It was so smart because she was able to take teenagers and remove like the parents in a way where they didn't just die. Like, yes, her mom dies, but they could explain away all of the like late night traipsing around that YA protagonists typically do. It made her not have neglectful parents. It was just a really smart way to do that, and something I haven't seen before. I liked that they put her in this like early admittance college program, and while she's there, she gets sucked into the secret society that's revolving around Arthurian lore, and she meets these two boys on campus, and they have like this love triangle that I loved. Their whole dynamic was so good, and the lore was so good, and she really just like throws you into the lore. There isn't really a whole lot of explaining done in the beginning. Like, she just keeps throwing things at you. Like, yes, you're gonna eventually get this. I'm just gonna keep throwing these things at you. Eventually you'll pick it up and eventually you'll like get it. And I did eventually get it, but if you're struggling in the beginning and you're not following the lore really that well, just know that you will get it. In the end, it will all come together and it will be amazing. Favorite book of the year. Can't wait for the sequel. So that is it. Those are my 7 favorite books of 2021. I would love to know what your favorite book of the year was in the comments down below so that I can check it out because I need some better books in my life. I always need better books in my life. I feel like I pick terrible books for myself to read. So if you have a good recommendation, please tell me down below so that I can read better books and have a better list for you at the end of 2022. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you would like to hang out with me anywhere else online, you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter. Until next time, I'll talk to you guys very soon. Bye!